This is the only working plane in Sudan Airways' small fleet. All other planes for the airlines don't fly because U.S. sanctions have prevented other countries from selling spare parts to Sudan.
The
U.S. sanctions have directly impacted the airline. We had more than 24 planes before the sanctions, and they would repeatedly stop working. Now, almost all are on the ground, and the sanctions made it impossible to get any spare parts.
But in less than 3 months, the U.S. is set to lift those sanctions. Sudan Airways can now get spare parts, and from the country that sanctioned it. 20 years of U.S. sanctions have hurt the economy. They were imposed as a result of the U.S. accusing Sudan of sponsoring what it calls terror organizations. The sanctions were eased in January of this year and could be lifted completely by July if the government improves human rights and provides humanitarian access in conflict areas. For Sudan Airways, the lifting of the sanctions couldn't have come sooner. Over the years, the airline has had to keep using the same spare parts without obtaining new ones. The continuous maintenance of parts of planes owned by Sudan Airways has resulted in several accidents over the years that sometimes the airline would rent planes from smaller companies to keep their schedules and not lose clients. Aircraft would be repaired so often that they eventually become unserviceable. Sudan Airways has had at least a dozen accidents since the sanctions were imposed. 8 of those have resulted in fatalities, but not all Sudanese blame sanctions for their airline's decline.
The main reason for the collapse of the airlines comes down to corruption in all kinds, administrative, economic, and poor planning in the country.
Sudan Airways was one of the largest airlines in Africa, but now it's just a name, and it's because of the failure of the government that the airline wasn't developed.
More than 1,500 people rely on the airline for income, and analysts say being able to get spare parts will help the economy.
We should expect to see the Sudanese government work with U.S. aviation companies to try to develop its fleet. After the sanctions were imposed in 1997, there was a decline in the trade sector. But that can change. There will be improvement for Sudan to import and export goods.
Sudan Airways, one of Africa's oldest airlines, has been around through good and bad for over 70 years. And now with a way to revive itself, it may be around a bit longer. Hiba, Al Jazeera, Khartoum.